All right. Welcome to the Employer Content Show, part of the Talent Insight series brought to you by HireWell and Before You Apply.
Wow.
Boom. That just happened.
Thanks.
I'm your host, James Hornick. Joining me is my co-host from Before You Apply, Mr. Authenticity himself, Nate Guggia.
That's good.
Boom. Yeah. I was running out of simple adjectives, so I had to kind of kick it up a notch.
Oh, God.
Okay. All right. So today's segment, don't be a social media fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah. We realized we've had so many different thoughts on this topic over the last month or 6 weeks since we kind of first kicked this around, that I'm trying to organize everything. And I think it's impossible. There's so many different aspects of this we want to pick apart, but part of it, we're going to hit on things that are related to both individuals as well as companies, because we want to tie this back to kind of employer content. And those things are very much intertwined, right? So people are a lot of times representing their company. This is not specific to LinkedIn. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about here is every platform ever. If anything, I think LinkedIn's behind the times. People in our audiences in that kind of B2B space and the professional space only see it now, because it might be their first kind of foray. But this has been happening on Facebook and Instagram and all this kind of stuff forever.
Yeah.
And, I think that everyone has a sense that social media is just weird. Mm-hmm. There's something off about it. You're addicted to it. You can't stop using it. You like it, but there's something weird and odd about it, and the way people kind of act on social versus how they act in real life and whatnot. And, it's kind of like CrossFit. You don't know why you're doing it, but it seems to work. It's kind of fun, but it's definitely strange. And you know that much, but anyway.
Yeah.
And I also want to kind of answer the question, why does my feed suck? And I think we'll kind of get into that too. So
cool.
Anyways.
Yeah. No, just something I'm thinking about. And I think about this kind of on a regular basis because I'm so active on LinkedIn specifically, but it's there is this version of me, and there's a version of me whenever I have conversations with people that I meet on LinkedIn and stuff. And then there's this other version of me that's the rest of my life, which people don't see. And fraud. I mean, seriously, it's that's what I'm getting at is as much as you want to try to mitigate that level of posturing, it's kind of impossible to do it because they are two different worlds. And especially when it comes to the B2B world of LinkedIn, the two don't normally collide.
Yeah. I don't know. I've gotten there, but it took me a while. I guess maybe we should define fraud first because of what I'm talking about here. And there's levels of this, right? So there's entry level tier 1 fraudster. And I think this is what literally everybody is guilty of. Mm-hmm. Right. So this is simple things when you first start posting on social media or posting on LinkedIn, you're trying to do it for some sort of business purpose, whether it's for your business or for yourself and your own, whatever, you read blogs about best practices and what time of day to post, and that you should always like your post and like everyone else who liked your post and comment back on them. And these are the topics you should talk about because they're the most popular. You should post pictures and memes. You should post motivational stuff. And ultimately it's basic B algo hacking 101, right? Mm-hmm. None of this is natural or yourself. And none of it's important. Absolutely none of it's important or necessary whatsoever. So that's it's getting that dopamine fix, which it's impossible to get completely away from, but that's kind of entry level, somewhat harmless, but still it's kind of fraud. The second level I would say is chasing that to an extreme. There's people out there who kind of make it their job. They want to become an authority or a perceived authority, right? They want to chase down, what was the name here? Because I was talking about this based on Gil Cohen's post a while ago. They want authority bias. That was the term I was looking for.
Okay.
So they want to become so big and so popular that they could say something mundane, but everyone's going to love it and think they're smart for it. So taking us off, maybe the first kind of detour here, authority bias in the classic sense is when it's typically related to people who are wealthy or in high positions in their company. Therefore, people kind of default to them and their opinion because they're perceived as being the authority. And it's a similar kind of thing on social media. When someone has 1 million followers, their words just for some reason carry more weight than someone who has 100 followers, even though they might be making the same point. They might be saying something completely stupid. So there's absolutely people who want to just become an authority, regardless if it has any real business impact for them or whatnot. And that's when they start taking algo hacking to an extreme, plagiarizing people, using engagement pods, blah, 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 just to jack up the numbers, whatever. Then there's professional level fraud. It's those people who are trying to sell you some package to get on their level and how they did it. And they tell you all the things that didn't actually get them there. And it's like the engagement pods that really got them there.
Yeah.
So, and there's lots of places that people out there who want to sell you some sort of program and how to become like a great social media presence to people. And it never actually pays off because it either doesn't work as well because it's just an engagement pod scheme, or it gets them those numbers, but they don't actually, whatever their business objective is, never actually got achieved, which is probably what we need to start tying this into as well. So,
yeah. Okay. Is that where
I can keep going if you want me to. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to mention you were talking about the conversation you had earlier today, but
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Okay. The thing I keep coming back to is this idea of like what really matters and then what we think matters. And it's easy when you get in it to think that those numbers really matter because they, like you were saying, like they make you feel good. If a lot of people agree with you, then it feels like you're doing something right. And you can fall into that trap to continue doing those things to keep getting people agreeing with you more and more and more. And somehow that makes you feel like you are moving in the right direction. But then when you look at it, like, what is the thing that you're really ultimately like trying to achieve? You're not getting there. Because
I would say, just to put words, is your vanity metrics versus business deliverables.
Sure. Yes. Right? That's the easy way to, that's the simple way to say it. But at the same time, like I understand how it happens because it's easy to think that that like social media activity is really productive because of the instant feedback that you can get. But then you go like, okay, is this actual real life? Is this like making my business or my work or whatever move forward? And a lot of times there's that disconnect between the two. And that's why like and sometimes just like you have to learn this through being a practitioner by just like doing it and maybe falling into one trap and then having the realization that none of that stuff really matters. But I say this so often, but I'll just keep repeating it, that like it comes down to creating what you want to create and detaching from those outcomes, because we can control the output, but we can't control the input, right? And if we separate from those, this whole thing becomes then really fun and actually really fulfilling because you're creating for yourself, which then in turn creates the right thing for other people because you're not doing it just to get a number.
Yeah.
And if you look at like, sorry, one more thing. If I look at like the people that I follow on a regular basis at this point now, after like doing this for so long and really paying attention to it, I bet you on a list of like between 15 or 20 people, 5 of them maybe are really well known with large audiences. The rest of them are people who just post really good stuff, who don't have the biggest following, who posts don't go viral every time they post it. And so I don't know. That's like, I think that's like the quality over quantity thing.
So let me dive a little bit deeper into this too.
Sure.
Vanity metrics versus kind of business outcomes. And I think this is the first kind of key thing to realize the difference between, let me define this out a little bit. The funny part about vanity metrics is I've seen people talk about vanity metrics being bad, then the next week they're talking about how many followers they have now, which is just makes me realize that I think most people don't understand what vanity metrics actually means. Yeah. And it's like it's a thing, you know, like I think it was coined by the guy who wrote The Lean Startup. You know, it's things that look like they matter because they're measurable, but don't actually impact a business outcome. And applying this to social media, the likes or comments or followers you have mean absolutely nothing if The real objective is some sort of business deliverable. If you're trying to make a sale, trying to boost your brand within a certain kind of niche, if you're trying to help your employer brand, if you're trying to just build relationships, to build partnerships, whatever it is, there's inherently a level of targeting that is important there.
Yes.
Your goal is to become well known, but it's also to become perceived as credible and an expert within that specific population of people, right? And the only way you do that is by talking about things in interesting ways that may only be understood by that group of people.
Yeah.
So these are topics that people who are in other industries, other sides of the world, outside of your market, outside of your domain, may have no idea what you're even discussing, have no idea what's even going on. But it's not like getting that part of the audience is not important at all. Yet all those things I kind of talked about at the beginning of this, all the kind of the algo hacking tricks, that's what it points you towards, is getting, audiences, getting engagement from audiences that don't matter and don't further whatever you're trying to do from a business perspective. And this is important both from a personal perspective, but also from if you're running this type of stuff for your business or on behalf of your business, it's really important that you understand the difference between the two. Because things that I can say with 100% certainty have both helped us hire and gotten us business were things that didn't really resonate with most people because it's not their jam. And I think detaching yourself, and I think so that's kind of, I guess, the first thing that is important to get, and why kind of what I'm calling being a social media fraud is the wrong path to go down. But
I would love
keep going if you want me to.
No, I would love to jump in and add something, but dude, yeah, that was good. You nailed it.
I would say on top of that, how do you define, this is how I define value. Because I think people talk about you need to make sure you add value in your social media post.
Sure. Yep.
Value means telling me something I don't already know, not something I'm going to agree with. And that's the other thing too. It's also really easy to get high engagement talking to people about stuff they already know, they already agree with. That's the whole essence of an echo chamber. That's when you get confirmation bias in play, really pulling out all the biases here. Yeah. But people love to hear stuff they already know, and they would love agreeing with it. But that, again, doesn't really further your cause of building any kind of credibility. What builds credibility is value in the form of providing new ideas, or at least new interesting takes on the ideas in ways that people maybe haven't thought about them before.
Yeah. That's, that's the thing. It's you can't be afraid to test out ideas. Social media, LinkedIn, especially, which we talked about it being a friendly environment. It's a great place to test ideas. We all have ideas that are a little bit outside the boundaries. Sometimes they're a lot outside the boundaries on just different ways to approach our work. Something that is done one way and we see a way to go this way. And it's not about being right. It's about getting people to think. And it's okay if people disagree with you. It doesn't mean that you're wrong, and it doesn't mean that they're right. And but you have to be okay with that, with putting stuff out there, because that's the difference maker. You're talking about is there's agreeable and vanilla, and that what that's going to get you if you deliver it. But if you take a right turn and put yourself out there and put some ideas out there, that's when people start to take notice and go, hey, if anything, this is making me think differently.
Yeah. Sorry, my computer was slowing up there for a second. I hope might didn't cut on your end. Yeah, that's 100% correct. I'm very pro. I was going to, cutting to the end of the whole thing, what I was going to suggest is I think one of the things you do need to do is innovate. That has to be always kind of one. I think that's one of the biggest issues in content creation, which maybe is another thing we kind of want to dovetail to, is the lack of innovation. And I think let me take a kind of hard turn here. I think there's too much of a focus on personal brand, not enough of a focus on creating great content. And I think when you're focused on personal brand, that a lot of times comes down to how am I perceived? How many likes do I have? Like your success metrics for having a personal brand in the traditional sense are how big your following is. Whereas if you focus on, let me just make the best content I can make, and I would say that from an idea perspective and an innovation perspective, your brand is just going to follow. That's your brand's going to fall into place without having to like worry about what it is. You're going to become known in the circles that are important to you as long as you're talking about the things and doing things in a way that people are finding interesting. Yeah. And I think that if people take an approach on, content creation is kind of like their core of what they want to focus on, and creating great stuff and putting their best effort into kind of creating new ideas, everything else takes care of itself, as opposed to worrying about like the top line, once again, kind of vanity metrics, which really is what personal brand is.
That part about the rest taking care of itself is so important. It's it's so true. It just does. It's not forced. It just comes organically. And I think that's just the best way to have an impact. What was I going to say? Shoot, I lost my train of thought. I had something good.
We can take another turn here because I had some notes that you had here. Okay. And I wasn't sure where you're going with it. So I want to hear what your thought process was. Editorial teams versus content teams.
Oh yeah. Okay. So So we were having this conversation actually as a team internally about kind of pushing the transparency or like the authentic boundaries in the content that we create for companies. Getting companies to just like tell more of the truth and like tell the right stories. The reality of it is that, again, authenticity is a very agreeable idea. I think any company, any person would say like the more authentic we can be, the better. But companies especially, they're not ready for it. They're not as ready as they think they are. So when it comes down to it, which is something that we experience, is push to be more, let's say, authentic or more transparent, push back to say, no, it needs to look a little bit more like this, right? And so, and that's because in companies, there's layers, right?
Yeah.
Bigger companies, there's more layers. And it's seen through a PR lens or a marketing lens or whatever. And what you end up getting is you get this like polished version of of authenticity. Something that starts very authentic, then, gets polished up a little bit before it's distributed out. So that's the reality of it. Now, there's ways to move more and more in that direction, start pushing those boundaries a little bit. And I think that's the approach that anybody from like the employer branding side needs to take at their company. I know there's probably a lot of employer brand leaders who just are like, we need to tell a more authentic story, but I'm getting pushback. And the way to start moving in that direction is to get people comfortable little by little with being more authentic. There's ways to do that. The ways that we do it is you just ask the right questions to get people to understand that when they answer those questions and when those get put out publicly, that it's not as scary as you think, that it actually doesn't damage your brand. If anything, it attracts people to it. It makes you more credible, more trustworthy. And so that's where this like editorial aspect comes in. And it's like acting like a journalist, right? Asking the right questions, getting the right information out to start telling those stories and pushing that limit more and more and more until the powers that be are more comfortable with this kind of content. And so I'll give you an example. Here's an example of I
want to interrupt your flow just for a second. Last time we did a show and this happened, you told me to interrupt you. I think your mic is like rubbing a little bit on your shirt or something like that. So.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right.
Yeah. So continue.
Thanks for interrupting me. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Is it better?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
All right. It'll probably happen again. Okay. So here's an example. Here's an example of like this is a good question that we ask. And it's like, it gets some really cool answers. Fast forward 2 years and your business is dead. Why did that happen? Right? Like, okay. We asked that question to everybody from founders to employees, depending on who we're interviewing. Okay. That's in some ways a bold question. But it gets people talking about liabilities in their company, about things that could potentially go wrong. I mean, those are all things like that should be talked about anyway, right? Another one is like, how does your company make money? How do employees get paid? Compensation, all that kind of stuff. Those are all like little things that companies themselves are like fearful of talking about. Like it's hard for us just to say like, hey, this is how we make money. You know? So it's like little things like that start pushing the limit.
No, that makes sense. I can see that. Those are awkward conversations where I think, are you having these conversations with at what level? Like everyone in the company, or I'm just curious?
No, it's whoever's whoever our interview subjects are for the content.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But we have a standard set of like 20 to 25 questions based on the function that are all around giving more and more information. But anyway.
Okay. I think other things I want to talk about. I already got into authority bias and confirmation bias. I was really proud of myself for that one. I think that you also kind of caught me on the troll post I had the other day. I was talking about everybody wants to talk about authenticity, but no one wants to stop writing like a robot. And I think that's at the corporate level, back to what you were kind of saying about that. That's always kind of inherently the case, right? When you got editorial teams meddling with the message, it's going to sound less and less human.
It is.
This is why everyone follows Elon Musk, but not Twitter and not Tesla. You know what I mean? It's like people follow the individual, not the company, just because they know they're actually talking to a real person versus like the processed message it gets out.
Yeah. Another thing that like you and I have just developed this relationship organically, like it's just happened. But like you and I are at the point where we push each other or encourage each other to put out better and better things, and if we see something that like could be done better, we tactfully, at least on my side, nudge the other person to say like, oh, this could have been done better. But like what I'm getting at is that, because we do this so often and we're continually thinking about it, like we're developing like our own group around this to do that, to like push each other and help each other be better and do it the right way. And I think for anybody, especially like internally, it's really easy to feel like you're on an island. You're like, with employer branding, recruitment marketing, and it's just, you're usually like a team of one or a very small team. It's easy to like look outside and maybe be part of these like employer branding groups and feel intimidated and feel like other people are doing it better or differently than you. And I can't encourage anybody who's in that position enough to like reach out and like find like-minded people that they can just like connect with on a regular basis.
Are you going to plug the Slack channel? You're just going to just go for it.
I was waiting for you to do it. But,
or did you want me to jump in?
Yeah, but seriously, like I think it's like important. It's really important.
Yeah. So on this point, I had a realization because I just kicked this off this week to give everyone a heads up, and it's something you and I talked about for a while, and I actually set up probably a month ago, but just didn't have the time until the holidays came around. I find it. I've had 3 or 4 clients and companies we work with that are way better marketing than I am. I'm not a real marketer. I'm a recruiter who started doing content. I love it. Right. So it's by default, it's marketing, but I'm not classically trained in marketing. But I've had multiple clients for our recruiting services come to me asking me like, how do you do this stuff? Like, how'd you get your podcast going? How do you do the video? Kind of all this kind of, fairly tactical stuff. But these are all places that have like actual money to spend on this, you know what I mean? And actual marketing staffs. And I was talking with a contact probably a week ago about this, who's actually a CMO of a company here in Chicago. And she kind of explained that the thing is that content is kind of like design, in that a lot of companies will have a design studio, right? So they'll have their designers, their UX people kind of like, and copy like focused in one area. That studio might work with a market. They're not really marketers, you know what I mean? They're working with a marketing department, but it's its own competency. Content's the same thing.
Yeah.
content is not truly at its core marketing. It's a different thing. It falls into marketing, rolls into marketing, but like people who are classically trained marketers aren't naturally content creators. And I think that anyone who is a good content creator, I mean, everyone figured it out on their own, everyone is a do-it-yourself person, and they started doing it for their company or for themselves. And that's why I think there's a big gap in terms of where there's some companies that are excellent at marketing that really, really struggle at content creation, which I think is most companies that are good. Getting to the point, I set up a Slack group, DIY content creators. So it's small. We just launched it this Monday. If anybody's interested, this is a free group. No one's selling anything. There's no agenda. It is strictly for people who want to make better content, share ideas with, understand how to do things tactically, run ideas off each other in terms of what's catchy, whatever. It's meant to be a feedback group for kind of like-minded people who are really passionate about this kind of stuff and want to focus on content creation instead of focusing on personal brand, right?
Yep.
So there's a sign up. Only sign up to make sure. I want to make sure they're real people, and I'll add you. So I'm adding everybody. But if you go to DIYcontentcreators.com and hit the sign up page, I will add you to the Slack group shortly thereafter. But it's been a pretty good group so far. I don't know how many people there are, 40, 50 just in the last first 3 days. So,
yeah. And it's really, it's pretty fun to see the engagement. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of conversations going on. I think this is a really good community for employer branding leaders who feel like they're on an island.
Yeah.
Anybody who touches recruitment marketing or employer branding and they feel like they're just kind of alone in all this, it's such a great place.
If you're a solo marketing person at a company, or it can be, I guess the examples I had before were replaced with more people, and your management wants you to start a podcast, you have no idea how. You know what I mean? Perfect community. There's a bunch of people on here who can kind of tell you what to do, bounce ideas off of, how to get set up, or just bouncing ideas off of what content could be cool. Join the group. Totally. Happy to chat.
Yeah, I had even today, Gil Cohen, he shot me a message and he said, here's what I'm thinking about posting tomorrow. What do you think? And I just gave him my quick feedback on it. It's that's exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. So trying to do something proactive, not just complain about the issue. That's the other show I do, the 10-minute talent rant. That's just complaining about stuff.
Good. What haven't we talked about?
I think a small point I wanted to make is when it comes to social, I think there's an opportunity cost. And this is why I don't subscribe to the idea that you have to post a lot, you have to post every day. There's definitely people out there that feel that pressure that they need to. But back to credibility, every post you have now, I guess on one hand, I'll say that I think people should be experimenting, as we said before, but every time you post something lame, that's one more person probably out there that's tuning you out, and it's a real thing. I think that posting when you have nothing to say and you're just doing it to go through the motions, or you're posting something motivational. If you're not, back to what I was saying about value, if you're not trying to provide something valuable in the message that you're giving, you open yourself up to people just losing interest. Yeah. And I think you and I can say, because as a big consumer of social content, which sounds like a horrible thing to say, probably because it is, there's a lot of people out there that I kind of quit following just because they said some cool things every once in a while, but now it's either repetitive or they're just posting about kind of nothing. So, and I'm not saying this to criticize, I'm saying this that people should just don't fall in the trap of feeling like you have to post something because, there's, just don't force it. So,
yeah. And you need to be getting something out of it yourself. There's a lot of days that the reason I post is because I just really, really enjoy the writing process of putting a post together. I just really enjoy that. And so I do it because of that. Mm-hmm. I took 2 weeks off in December, at the end of December, and I still posted, I think most days, just because I really wanted to. And I think that's that's a really important piece, and don't force that piece either. But I think like the more you do it, the more you get into like just creating for yourself, like I talked about earlier. But yeah, I don't know, man. Here, this is like, well, we didn't really touch about engagement, or we didn't talk about engagement pods. You mentioned that, but here, hold on one sec. I'll start it off real quick. Lately, I feel like this has probably been going on a lot longer. I'm sure it has. But lately, I've been seeing people go from having relatively like normal engagement on a post to like astronomical engagement almost like overnight. And then it's just like on a consistent basis. And we're talking like leaps.
Yeah.
Which then
multiple
exponential. And then like every time I see that, like it's just like a red flag where I'm like, what's going on here? Like how the hell did it wasn't that good. And actually like it's getting worse, but the engagement keeps going on. And like, it's funny. Like I'm not like, I talk so much about not caring about engagement. And so this isn't me like caring about engagement. It's more like observing behaviors that just make me really, I don't know, curious about this stuff.
Well, I think this relates back to what I was saying, kind of like the advanced levels of fraud and whatnot. So engagement pods, for anybody who doesn't know, it could be simple groups like a WhatsApp chat, or it could be there's actual automated programs out there like Chrome extensions that do this, where if you post, everyone else in the group is going to like or comment on it no matter what. That could be, and they're going to do it in the first 10 minutes or whatever. So that could be 50 people, that could be 200 people, that could be 300 people. And that's how engagement gets artificially inflated. So it's like algo gaming on an extreme level. So is it, it's the issue is that it's not, that's how a lot of these posts that are kind of lame and a lot of these people keep getting consistently insane engagement. I don't know what it actually gets them though, because it's like I said before, and this kind of comes back to the scammers though. So in terms of the individuals, if you're not providing value, you're not building credibility, you're just racking up numbers that don't matter. You know what I mean? People aren't going to want to do more business with you just because they saw you had a viral post that didn't really say anything. And the problem is that there's a lot of people out there who haven't realized that yet. They just know they just want to build a bigger and bigger following. And some of these other people are saying, well, here's how you do it, kid. Join my group. We'll charge you money for it. And then obviously, we'll help. And then their engagement numbers go up. But guess what? They don't make more sales. They don't improve their marketing. They just get nonsense crap engagement. And it drives me crazy only from the standpoint of it just clogs my feed up. Like you end up seeing stuff that really, the algo and it should work where the best content rises to the top, but you and I know it obviously doesn't because of engagement pods and because of more like less, and just because of people's inability to not like memes. Right. But that's the issue I have with pods is that it makes the feed less valuable for everybody else. It destroys the value of the overall network by propping up stuff that isn't that good. And it gets even worse when it's on a pay-to-play type model. That's actual fraud.
I didn't know that it could just be automated like that.
Yeah, there's a few programs out there that do it. And if you go to those programs' websites, it even says like, here's how we keep from being detected by the algo and by LinkedIn and all this kind of stuff. So,
yeah. Or then it's just like a matter of time before you get before you see the buy my ebook post or something like that. Yeah. Right. It's like
people selling their books and hawking their. It's always life coaches, man. It's always life coaches.
Yeah. I don't think sales coaches are immune to it either. Yeah. Sales consultants or anybody who's ex
sales bros,
who's ex in-house something or other, who's now independent.
Former VP of sales at 3 companies, now independent consultant. You go, Chief.
That's the one.
Anyway,
all right.
Anything else? I did have some things I want to some focus points that I wanted to mention to wrap up on what to do and what I think is valuable. But I don't know if there's anything else you want to complain about first, because I like to getting all the dirt out of the way.
No, we're good.
All right.
What you got?
So here's the last things. And the first one, I think we could actually do kind of another deeper conversation on. One, if you're serious about content creation and you want to build a reputation, you want to build credibility, and you want to do it through content, first thing to focus on is idea capture. And this is, I think I just coined that phrase, by the way, so I'm really impressed with myself. Google it just in case I didn't. But it's a combination of expanding your own knowledge base and then applying that to your subject matter. And, we could talk about how like no idea that you or I have is ever unique or original, right? It's just like human nature. Everything is always borrowed or ripped off of something. But the more range you have, whether it's from reading books, listening to audiobooks, blogs, videos, whatever, of things, I think personally outside your industry, that's where you're going to expand and get new insights and new ideas. You're going to find new ways to apply that to what it is you do and what your domain is. That's how you start coming up with ideas that are legitimately things people haven't heard before. There's things that I think you and employer brand, you're very much in kind of greenfield because there's not that many people who do it, right? Compared to a lot of other fields. But if you want to really create good biting stuff, you can create literally unique ideas that you created by expanding your own domain knowledge in other areas and applying that to what you do. Yeah. Other part of idea capture, I think, is also just not forgetting those things, which is what everyone kind of screws up on. You have to write these things down. When a good idea comes to you, make sure you've kind of logged it somewhere as something for another day. Second thing, write every day. I can't underscore this enough. We were dumping on posting every day. I post pretty much every day, not because I'm trying to post every day, just because I'm forcing myself to write every day. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure I'm actually making an effort to kind of keep my skills sharp. I do think that's important. I do think that is one of their best uses or best reasons to post every day if you're into that kind of thing. Just to force yourself to make it a habit of coming up with an idea or flexing your writing skills. One, to become a better writer, but two, it's I think for me personally, if I don't write every day and I take a lot of time off, it becomes more daunting. I don't want to get back into it because I feel like it just seems like it's gonna be a pain in the ass. Yeah. So by kind of staying current and making sure I force myself to kind of do a writing exercise every day, I think that's another key thing. And I'm saying this too, even if you're into video content, I think that writing every day, even if you're not in a real content creator, even if you're a salesperson or a recruiter or marketer or engineer, whatever, I think writing is hugely important. And the last thing is the one thing that you mentioned is experimenting, innovation. No one's figured out. By the time everyone else has figured things out, if something that's successful is just going to get copied, and if all you're doing is copying what other people do, that's cool if you're maybe a unique person in your space that's doing it, but eventually someone else is going to copy it too, and I think you always need to be kind of pushing forward. And it's another reason why we created the DIY content creators, is to help bounce ideas off each other to hopefully find some new innovative ways to make content.
Yeah.
So
cool. No, man. Well said. I don't know. I'd add something, but
want me to end it? Oh man, we're 40 minutes in. How do we do this?
Don't worry, no one's watching right now anyway.
I know.
They're like, whatever.
All right. Well, I think our first show back and first show in a month was pretty good. I didn't know if I remembered my login codes to get into the streaming program here. So that was the first thing that worked out well in my favor. But anyways, that's a wrap for the Employer Content Show. If you want to hear more of what Nate and I have to say, you can subscribe to the Hire Well channel on YouTube, where we have a playlist of all of our episodes, and the Talent Insights podcast, which is available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Amazon. Nate, pleasure as always.
Good to see you, man.
Everyone out there, we'll see you soon.
Bye.